welcome to the Stronger After Stroke podcast. I'm your host, Rosa Hart, stroke nurse navigator for Norton Healthcare, and today I get to meet with a stroke survivor who is not what you expect when you think of a stroke survivor. This is Russell Deakins.
Yes.
Thank you for being with me today, Russell.
Thank you.
And he has a really incredible story to share, and it's not entirely uncommon. So I'm really thankful you're willing to share what having a stroke at your age was like for you, because it's actually more and more common.
Mm-hmm.
So can you tell us, first of all, what was your life like before you had a stroke?
So before my stroke, I was the typical 30-year-old male. Married, kids, job, athletic. I took care of myself. I wasn't the definition of fitness, but I did enjoy running half marathons, 5Ks, and playing in the yard with the kids.
I don't know if that's the typical 30-year-old male. I don't know many who run races. What kind of races were you running?
So I like to compete in half marathons, 5Ks. So half marathons pre-stroke, I had done 5 of them. After my stroke, I set a goal to complete another one.
Oh, well, we'll hear about that and see how that worked out. So before you had a stroke, was there anything that kind of led up to it where you expected something to happen, or did it come out of the blue?
It somewhat came out of the blue. I was just burning vacation days, and my stroke happened on a Wednesday. Well, I woke up the Tuesday before, and I remember telling my wife while I was getting them ready for work and school and typical fall life that I felt like I was going to have a migraine. Like I said, I was 30 years old, hadn't had them since high school, so 10, 12 years since the last migraine event.
So it was very unusual.
It was a weird feeling. But that day came and went, and cooked dinner and helped out, and it was a normal day. The Wednesday of my stroke, I remember waking up the same way and just not feeling right. Something going on upstairs felt weird. Helped get the wife and kids out the door. And then at noon that day, I got the cold chills like we all have, and I felt like I was going to get sick. I walked to the bathroom. I got sick like we've all done, and then I couldn't stand up. At that point, I knew it was something more than a migraine.
Is that when you called 911? Did you do that?
I did not. My parents live in my neighborhood, and my dad has a home office. So I actually crawled back to the living room, picked up my cell phone, and called my dad. I told him, I said something was wrong, that I had gotten sick and I couldn't stand up. At that point, he drove over, he came in the house, and he, son, let's stand up. That wasn't the case, and that's when he called 911.
Because he knew that wasn't like you.
That was not me.
You're not one to just lay around the house.
I was burning vacation days, so I was relaxing, but that is not me. If there's anybody that could stand up, it was me. Initially, the ambulance, they took me to the hospital, and that's when the whole journey began.
So did they know right away you were having a stroke from your symptoms?
No. The ambulance took me to the hospital, and they initially were treating me in the in the ER for a migraine with vertigo. After a few hours of being there, I remember I was laying on my side, and the nurse walked in, and my whole vision field had flipped, and I thought he was upside down. And I remember asking him, was he on his head? And when he said no, I remember saying, well, I thought you were the coolest nurse I'd ever met.
You walked in on your head.
You walked in upside down. At that point, they ran an MRI, CT, whatever scan they needed. And the doctor came into the room and told me, after asking a lot of questions, if there's a history of different things, that's when the doctor told me that I had a vertebral artery dissection, which caused a cerebral stroke.
And I'm really glad that you're highlighting the fact that you had a visual change, and that's what tipped them off as to what was going on with you, that this was not just a migraine or headache situation.
Yeah.
There are some headaches that can cause visual changes, but actually we've now learned that 65% of strokes involve vision in some way and affect your ability to see. And so I'm really glad you were in a place where you could get treated and get that evaluated as soon as possible. So then, did you stay in that same hospital for treatment?
So initially I did. I stayed there for, I think, 3 nights. I think it was on day 4. Um, the nurse came in and I was sweating profusely on one side of my body. And they called a doctor in and they said it was Horner syndrome, which is just brain swelling. And that's when I met Dr. Yao, the neurosurgeon. He started to put a drain in at that location and then said we needed to be transported to Norton Brownsboro to finish the operation. And he took the time, he woke me up and he said, "Mr. Deakins, we can't finish this operation here. We're going to have to transport you to Brownsboro." He goes, "But I will be there for you." And I said, "Oh, are you riding in the ambulance?" And he kind of laughed and said, "No, but I'll be there for you." Well, when we got to Brownsboro, Dr. Yao, he took the time to pat me on the shoulder again and say, "Mr. Deakins, it's Dr. Yao. I told you I'd be here." Uh, they then put me the rest of the way under and finished the drain in the top of my head and then did a craniectomy to relieve the swelling.
Wow,
So
that's a whole lot.
I stayed at Brownsboro for just shy of 2 more weeks, and then I got transported to inpatient rehab downtown at Fraser. And then I got discharged eventually.
Yeah. So I know before we started recording, you were telling me how much that meant to you, that Dr. Yao followed up on his promise to be there for you, even though you were about to be sedated and not participate in the rest of what was going on. And that really highlights the principle of fidelity, where in healthcare, if we say we're going to do something, we really try to follow through on that and build that trust. Because how did that make you feel?
So you always trust your doctors, trust your neurosurgeons at that. But for him to take the time when we made it to Brownsboro to reiterate the fact that he was there for me, I told him at a follow-up appointment that we just became boys. I said, in that very moment, we became boys. Like, you were there for me.
Wow. Well, and it's really good to hear that kind of feedback. So thank you for sharing that. So once you got out of rehab and you were able to go home, you've got 2 little kids at home at the time. You got another one now, don't you?
Yeah, we now got a third one.
Yeah, but when you got home from the hospital, what was that like as like a husband and a father coming home?
So the husband aspect was fine. My wife is a nurse, so she at least understood the language and could relate with the doctors and nurses day to day. My stroke was November 30th, so I was in the hospital all through Christmas. At the time, my 2 oldest children were 4.5 and a little over 2, and they brought them up to the hospital for Christmas. And I had a drain in the top of my head, and my mom just casually said, "Be careful around Dad. You could hurt him." Well, my 2-year-old son didn't take that to heart. He was a 2-year-old boy hanging out for Christmas at the hospital. On the other hand, my daughter, who was 4.5 at the time, she took that to heart. After the 2 weeks of inpatient therapy and finally getting released home, it was 6 weeks or so before I even got the first hug from my daughter.
Aw.
She took to heart the fact, "Don't touch Daddy, you could hurt him." And because she was my firstborn, because she's Daddy's girl, that absolutely broke my heart. to go 6 weeks with my daughter just waving goodnight.
Bless her heart.
Yeah.
Aw. So then what was your recovery like as far as getting back into your athletic pursuits and going back to work and everything?
So after inpatient, I went to an outpatient neuro rehab facility, which was 5 days a week. I was there for right around 4 or 5 weeks and then got released to just outpatient physical therapy, 3 days a week, just one session a day. Um, the first day of outpatient neuro rehab, they were showing me around. It's in the middle of the winter, so they said, this is where we put our lunches, this is where we hang our jackets. And I had physical therapy first that morning. They changed the schedule every day. Had physical therapy first, and she said, and this is where we park our walkers. So I thought that meant that's where we park our walkers every day. Day 2, I showed up, and I had speech therapy first. So I put my lunch away, I hung my jacket up, and I put my walker up. And that was really the start of, I'm going to beat this. The physical therapist later that day, she was like, I could give you a hug right now. You went to speech therapy without your walker. And first time having a stroke, first time being there, I thought,
Hopefully,
I told her, I said, oh, I thought we put our lunches away, we put our jackets up, and then we put our walkers away. And she was like, no, that's just because you were coming to the physical therapy gym that morning. So that was kind of the first step in me beating this and recovering.
having some hope that you could get beyond where you were.
Yeah, because it was, I think it was 7 or 8 days post-stroke, I took my first steps. Other than that, I've just been laying in the bed.
Wow. And that must have been really hard for you because you were used to being up and active. So when did you get back into running? Because that's how we initially found you.
So during inpatient therapy, I remember asking the therapist if a half marathon was an achievable goal, because I had ran them in the past, and she said, yeah, it's a good long-term goal. And I signed up for one that week.
How far out was it?
It was 10 months post-stroke. Right at 11 months post-stroke. It was 10 months from that conversation with the therapist.
And that felt like a long-term goal to you.
Yeah. So I remember telling my dad, I said, if there's anybody stubborn enough to finish this race, it's me.
He believed you, didn't he?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So I did the outpatient therapy for a few weeks, and then I was released on my own. Check in if I need anything. And at that point, I was still off work, but I would go on walks through the neighborhood or go to the grocery store, which all the therapists love. But I said a shopping cart is just a walker. So I would go to the grocery store and walk around and get what we needed for the evening and go from there. That led to a little bit more distance to training, a little bit more time in the actual gym, on a treadmill, on a bike. And then race day showed up, and I remember I woke up that morning and every doubt I could have ran through my head. I'd been through so much, I was like, it's not going to happen. But then it did.
So did you walk it? Did you run?
Yes. So that race, I walked all 13.1 miles. There was no running at that point. There was no running when I was going to the gym. It was strictly just speed walking.
Which is its own kind of
Which is its own thing, especially at 13.1 miles.
Were you doing the arm movements with the speed walking?
So to this day, as I sit right now, I still cannot do that on a treadmill.
Okay.
I drift just a little bit to the sides, and as soon as I feel the side of the treadmill, I freak out and put my hands down.
No.
So, but walking open, walking at a park, walking, yes, it's your little old lady aerobic walking.
That's awesome. But I mean, what a huge accomplishment. And you even said you felt like you weren't going to be able to do it that day. But so how did you overcome that voice in your head?
So, race day, my mom and my brother-in-law were there. They did it with me. And I've said, they're here for me. I can't stand it. I can't quit on them. Mile marker 3. So the three of us had shirts that my wife made. The back of mine said warrior, and the back of my mom and brother-in-law said support squad. Mile marker 3, a guy walked up and he goes, okay, I've got to ask, why is he a warrior and why are y'all the support squad? So I gave him kind of the Cliff Notes version of my story. And he looked at my mom and he said, well, if you don't mind, I'm going to stay with y'all the rest of the race. And later in the race, we found out he signed up the night before. Like, he signed up Friday evening to do 13.1 miles on Saturday. And then we crossed paths. So I have respect for him. Honestly, he helped me get through it because we could talk goofy running stuff. Like, nobody enjoys it. This guy did. So this was my 6th half marathon. It was his 100 and something.
Which is why he just signed up.
Yeah, that's why he signed up the night before, just to say, I've done this. But the year he turned 52, he ran 52 half marathons.
In that year?
In that year.
Oh, wow.
So that was his goal. So yeah, he helped all of us get through that finish line that day.
That is so awesome. Just the connections that you find with people that you weren't expecting. And I'm so glad they could be there for you. And so much of the time we push ourselves for other people, even more for ourselves. So now as you go about your daily life, can you internally tell that you even had a stroke? Or do you feel like you are kind of like, was that a part of your life that is over? Or how do you feel about that?
It's not gone. It'll definitely be something that I live with my whole life. Like I said earlier, my parents live in the same neighborhood as me and my family. So when I cut the grass, they can see me in my yard and they say, you look so much better. But then I'm my own worst critic. And if I take a hard side step pushing the mower, then I feel like, oh, that's because I had a stroke. It's not because there's a divot in the ground. It's because I had a stroke.
Wow. At least you have a really good excuse for anything you want to use it for.
Yes. Right? Yeah. I didn't wear glasses beforehand. But
okay. So that is a change.
That is
new. Do you have visual changes like the upside down or?
Yeah. So the upside down went away, I guess, really quick. The first couple nights in the hospital, I had a full right vision block.
Oh, wow.
So I couldn't see anything in this window. To the right. That has gone away, so I can see you.
Okay. You're not just pretending.
I'm not just pretending you're sitting there. I can see you. But without my glasses, I do have full double vision.
Oh, okay.
So,
but they're able to correct it with the lenses?
So they are prism lenses and they fix it. I can drive, I can function, but without them, there's 2 of everything.
Yeah. Did you go to vision therapy as well? Or?
I did. So that started later, the vision therapy. I got fitted for glasses with the prisms and they fixed the double vision. And then that was probably February or so. I think it was about May, I started in vision therapy, going once a week and doing exercises to try to strengthen the muscles around the eyes. And that it definitely helped a lot of stuff.
Yeah, because did it affect your balance and your ability to walk and do other parts of like physical therapy to have your vision doubled?
I would have to agree. Yes, say so, yes. I never felt like it was affecting me because I had my glasses just a couple weeks into physical therapy. So I never really experienced physical therapy without them. The couple weeks that I didn't have my glasses, I had to wear an eye patch and alternate it from eye to eye.
Gotcha. So you were doing an intervention to treat it.
Single eye, of course, I could see single. So I just had to cover up one and play pirate for a week or 2.
Was it more fun to have glasses?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The patch got really old really fast.
Yeah, I bet. Man. Well, so amazed at how well you're doing. That really just is so awesome to see your recovery. And you did mention that your stroke was caused by a vertebral artery dissection.
Mhm.
So it was more like an injury, not due to like a chronic disease process like high blood pressure, high cholesterol, or high blood sugar. Are those anything that you've had to learn to deal with after the fact, or?
So I have cholesterol issues, but that's it out of that list. But the
Did you know
cholesterol,
that before, or did you find out as a result of the stroke workup?
yeah, I knew before.
Oh, okay. Because a lot of people find out.
Definitely it got worse after the stroke. My blood work, it's got a little worse after the stroke. But I was on cholesterol medications and dealing with that, and then had a stroke that was not caused by the
Right.
cholesterol.
Yeah, exactly.
So
And so, I mean, that's just important to know that you can have a stroke even if you don't have those things. So it's very important for us to all be aware of the signs of stroke to watch for and to know when to call 911. I'll go over it real quick because I can't pass up the opportunity.
yeah.
First of all, balance, a sudden change in balance. E is for eyes, a sudden change in vision. F is for face, like a facial droop some people get on one side. A is for arms, where one arm is weaker than the other. And then S is for speech, like slurred speech. And T is for time, where time saved is brain saved. So
Mhm.
just like your dad did not waste any time, he called 911. That was the right thing to do. And I'm really glad that you had such a good outcome after all that.
Yes.
So thank you for sharing your story with us, Russell. And I hope that other people are encouraged by it.
Yes, thank you.
If you've enjoyed this episode of the Stronger After Stroke podcast, please subscribe wherever you're listening or if you're watching on YouTube. And feel free to leave me a comment with something you learned or something you'd like to learn more about. And I'll see you in the next episode.